Rachel Edidin.
And I'm Miles Stokes.
And we're the hosts of Rachel and Miles Explain the X-Men, a weekly podcast all about the ins, outs, and retcons of our favorite superhero soap opera.
We're also the hosts of Rachel and Miles Review the X-Men,
which you're watching right now,
where we talk about the X books that come out each week.
This week we're going to be reviewing the books that came out on June 17th, 2015.
Let's go ahead. Our first book this week is Magneto number 19, written by Cullen Bunn with art by Paul Davidson and colors by Paul Mounts. So this is the second part of the Last Days of Magneto. Last Days stories are the ones that are coming out in the old Marvel Universe, but concurrent to Secret Wars. So they technically take place before Secret Wars number 2.
The books are coming out concurrent to Secret Wars. The stories take place before Secret Wars starts.
Exactly. So this one's basically Magneto trying to stop the incursion, the overlapping of the Ultimate Universe and the Marvel Universe that ended up destroying everything.
Spoiler, he fails.
Yes, otherwise Secret Wars would not have happened. The previous issue, which was the first part, kind of fell flat with us. I mean, it was very high action, very garish, for lack of a better term. It didn't feel like the sort of subtlety, nuance, and moral grayness that had characterized the previous issues in the run. But this one, for me, I'm not going to say it's a full return to form, but it does manage to continue telling the story while still recapturing some of what I really, really dug from the previous issues.
Really? Because I did not see that at all. This issue fell so flat for me.
It's interesting. I mean, the last one definitely did for me. But what I really like is that a lot of this issue is flashback. It's Magneto in plain clothes, hanging out with his human ally, who he's been with for a while, and basically going to get more and more doses of drugs to enhance his mutant powers. He knows this thing is coming, and he knows he's going to have to be as powerful as possible to stop it. And for me, the fact that he also knows that those drugs are definitely going to kill him if he uses them makes it much higher stakes, and also very strongly implies that he's basically attempting to commit suicide by world saving, which for this character, with the arc we've seen so far, I totally buy.
See, you're not wrong, but I don't think that the story sells it, and I really don't think the art sells it. Now, the end of this story is a foregone conclusion. We absolutely know that Magneto is going to fail because Secret Wars is already taking place. And for me, what that means is that the meat of the story has to be in the getting there. This is a story about an ultimate and spectacular failure, ultimately. And that substance isn't there. The art is busy, it's garish, the colors are... there are points when Mounts is obviously echoing Belair's palette in the flashbacks, and those kind of work, but there's no subtlety to it. I really don't need to see pages that are basically just Magneto and Polaris shooting different colored force lightning. And, I mean, none of this stuff is a deal breaker in and of itself, but in this book it adds nothing to the story. If anything, it distracts. And, I mean, this feels like treading water to me. It feels like the death throes of something that was really lovely and really impactful, just sort of in a final spasm before it fails to be pulled into the next world.
Yeah, I think we're clearly of two very different minds on this. With me, I think where the proof is going to be is the next issue, how the story continues, how the story ultimately ends. Whether it really captures what makes the book Magneto, that'll kind of be the proof of whether this ends up being a good story or not. I think it can. I'm optimistic that it will, but we'll find out.
Speaking of Secret Wars, we'll move on to Battle World for the next book. That's Old Man Logan number 2, written by Brian Michael Bendis, drawn by Andrea Sorrentino, and colored by Marcello Maiolo. Now, as you'll recall, we really liked the first issue of this, and that, I think, continues. This issue, for me, is less distilled and less focused than the first, but it's weird in ways that work well, and it's giving us something we haven't seen so far in the X-line, which is basically a fish out of water in Battle World, a character who doesn't really seem to understand the universe he's in.
Right, there's one scene where one of the Thors shows up as Wolverine is trying to cross the borders between one kingdom and the next, and he just turns to her and says, "Why are you dressed like a dead man?" That's the only Thor he knows, is the hero who died in his world. And so we have like the last cowboy discovering a world far bigger than he ever thought existed, which is a very different premise than the original Old Man Logan, and one that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, Sorrentino's art is, I feel like, one of those things, and Sorrentino and Maiolo in combination especially, I feel like are one of those styles that you're going to really love or really hate. I think with the wrong story, they would be catastrophic. With this one, they are spot on. There's a weird, eerie kind of freeze-frame cinematic quality to Sorrentino's art that works really well with what, as you said, sort of the feeling of the last cowboy having the screen tear away and discovering that he's in someone else's space opera.
Right, it's like the Truman Show from hell. It's kind of awesome.
That's definitely one angle on it. It's also got some the world that he stumbles into, I'm not going to spoil, but it's got some really interesting interaction and culture shock, and a last page spoiler that's leading to something that I'm really curious about. It's a solid issue in what's so far been a solid series. So obviously we're a house divided here. I'm wondering what that's going to mean for our pick of the week.
So our pick of the week is actually neither of those books. It's Thors #1, written by Jason Aaron, with art by Chris Sprouse and Carl Story, and colors by Marte Gracia. And, okay, so if you've been following these reviews, you may recall that in Secret Wars #2, one of the many things we really, really liked was the concept of the Thors, a police force for all of Battleworld composed of a bunch of different Thors from a bunch of different realities.
This is their story, or to some extent, they're the central characters. It's basically a really traditional police procedural starring a bunch of Thors. Everyone is Thor.
Right, so it's like CSI with a lot more calling down the lightning and the storm, and it's phenomenal. I had never thought of this premise. I mean, it's a really weird premise, but I've realized that there has been, I have been wanting this book for my entire life, and I did not have a name for that desire.
Seriously, you never had a moment where you thought, if only there were like CSI or Point Break or something, but everyone was Thor. If only I had this one thing, my life would be complete. Like, you never had that light bulb moment?
It was always just a mystery. I knew that perfection was somewhere out of reach, and now I know that perfection is called Thors #1. So, guys, this is not really an X book at all. Yes, Storm in her brief Thunderer guise is in it, and that's awesome, but it's a Thor book. It's an Asgardian book. Doesn't matter. If you like good things, you should probably read this comic, because it's made entirely of good things. It's an incredible amount of fun. I know it's not going to last past Secret Wars. That makes me like it even more, because I know it'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Just do yourself a favor, check it out. So, all of that hyperbole aside, Rachel, what's our panel of the week?
Well, no matter what it is, it's going to be pretty anticlimactic after that. And it is, in fact, a fairly quiet panel. This is from Old Man Logan #2. And it is after Logan has fallen into a world other than the one he's used to. And it's a moment, I'm going to put it up on the screen, of him in his mindscape. This world's Emma Frost is talking to him there. And I love the framing of, I guess, 3 panels. First of all, he's got her by the throat. That's his hand there. It's his point of view. And she's still so completely in control. Mm-hmm. Second, having the X-Men in there in that poster, the way they're arranged, the way they're behind her, the way they're both centered, as kind of almost a judgmental backdrop. These are the X-Men that Logan killed in his own world. And it's just a really good, really impactful framed moment. It's really hard in comic. It's easy to show a scene. It's hard to show a character point of view as effectively as this panel does. And I really appreciated that. So that just about wraps it up for this week.
Indeed it does. Thanks for watching. Now, I can't help but notice that we seem to be clad somewhat differently than we normally are. What's going on here?
That is because this week is a special week for us. This week is the semi-annual summer special, and instead of doing what we did for winter and basically doing an extra long normal episode, we did something very different this week. We had game developer Logan Bonner come down from Seattle and run us through an X-Men animated adventure.
Indeed we did, and we had you, the listeners, vote on who we were going to play, and in fact...
Which should be fairly obvious from our quick change. You can listen to that, and our podcast in general, at rachelandmiles.com. New episodes go up every Sunday there and on iTunes and Stitcher. You can also check out rachelandmiles.com for additional material, essays, companion posts, and much more.
Yep, and these videos, our podcast, giant-sized specials, like the one where I'm going to be talking in a horrible southern accent.
Oh my god, you have no idea.
It's really bad, guys. Are all made possible by our generous and badass Patreon supporters. You guys are rad as hell. Thank you so much for doing what you do.
If you want to join their ranks, you can do that at the link either right above or right below this video, depending on where you're watching. Otherwise, we'll see you in the funny pages.
I'm Rogue, a southern gal who talks in colorful metaphors, and you look as tired as a NASCAR driver with a concrete steering wheel.
Well, Rogue, that's because as Cyclops, all I really do is disapprove of anything fun and frequently state the obvious. It gets a little old.
Huh, almost as old as never being able to be touched by another human being.
You know, I'm not really sure we've got the animation budget for your lustrous tresses. You want to find a ponytail holder?
Oh yeah, that'll take care of it, yeah.